well.
Off that noon kick. Just talk to me about this.
That's it.
Very just the way they play. I mean, they're tough on all.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you guys are having a nice week. It is Friday, big game tomorrow between the Indiana Hoosiers and Ohio State. It's such a big game, in fact, that, been doing this show all football season, and every Friday we open, or I've opened, with the Indianapolis Colts taking on, whoever they play. But that is not what we're doing this week. We are opening with a little college football. Indiana going on the road to take on Ohio State in what is the biggest game of the year for them. And I personally cannot wait to watch this game, right? There are so many college football playoff implications on everything that's happening this week, or in that game at least. And it's going to be great. Currently, Indiana is an 11.5-point underdog, which isn't surprising given the given the lack of respect given or shown towards Indiana this week. Okay, I have hammered this point home all week. If you've listened to my show every day this week, then chances are you've heard me say this at least once. If you've seen Indiana play football, then you know that they are good. I can't wait until 11 o'clock. Zack Gray comes on the show every Friday. He is set to join me. He's going to join me at 11. He's from Ohio, huge Ohio State fan. We're going to talk a little gambling, and then we're going to talk a lot about this matchup. That's at 11 o'clock. I promise you do not want to miss that. It's going to be absolutely awesome. And Indiana has been questioned repeatedly to start the year. Okay, the schedule, not very good. So what? They've beaten everybody by 30. And they have an opportunity tomorrow to go on the road to Columbus and prove that they are indeed one of the 5 best teams in the country. That they are deserving of a college football playoff bid. Everybody is going to watch this game tomorrow. It's big noon kickoff. College Game Day is going to be there. The Fox Morning Show is going to be there. It is the only big game of the day. Okay, the second and third most intriguing games tomorrow are Ole Miss at Florida and Arizona State at BYU. Okay, that game, sneaky important for the Big 12. But the country, primarily, is going to have their eyes on Indiana versus Ohio State. This is a big game for Indiana. This is the biggest game Indiana has played since November 21st, 2020, when Indiana was ranked 9th and they went on the road to play at Ohio State. They lost 42-35. That game was awesome. That Ohio State team was really good. That was Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson. And for Indiana, that's when Michael Penix Jr. was playing the quarterback spot. I mean, incredible, right? That was 4 years ago, and we find ourselves in a pretty similar spot. Late November, big game on the road in Columbus. And whenever I look at big games and I try to figure out who I'm going to pick to win, you have to go and look at the quarterback spot because it's the most important position on the field, as you and I both know. Okay? Like if this was the NBA Finals and the Lakers were playing the Celtics, I would talk about LeBron James and Jason Tatum because they're the 2 best players and the 2 most important players for those teams. So I think that when it comes to football, we should do the exact same thing. So Will Howard, the starting quarterback for Ohio State, is not Justin Fields. Okay? Like he's not. And Curtis Rourke, who I like, isn't going to be a first-round pick. Like when we think back to November 21st, 2020, when it was Ohio State and Indiana in a very similar spot, you had 2 quarterbacks that wound up getting selected in the top 10. You don't have that this time. Okay? Talent is important, and Ohio State is more talented than Indiana. But more importantly, talent at the quarterback spot matters, and the gap between Will Howard and Curtis Rourke isn't that big. Like if you told me that Will Howard was better than Curtis Rourke, I'd be like, yeah, I can see that. And if you told me that Curtis Rourke was better than Will Howard, I'd be like, yeah, I can see that too. Their numbers are almost identical, except for the fact that Curtis Rourke has played in 1 less game and he doesn't run the ball as much as Will Howard does. My point here, though, in bringing up the quarterbacks is that this isn't Shooter Sanders. This isn't Cam Ward on either side. Like I don't expect for Will Howard or Curtis Rourke to go out there, throw for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns and just light it up. I don't expect that from either quarterback. Now, To be fair, Will Howard threw for 326 passing yards against Oregon, so he could. Curtis Rourke has 3 games this year where he's thrown for over 300 yards, but throwing for 300 yards against Maryland or UCLA is very different than throwing for 300 yards against the Ohio State Buckeyes. Okay, so with the quarterbacks being so close in terms of, skill level and talent and all those things, you have to look other places. And for me, the second place I look is who is coaching. Who are the head coaches? Is there any sort of edge in that spot? And when I raise that question of who's the better coach, Curt Cignetti or Ryan Day, I think people would immediately say, oh, it's Curt Cignetti, year 1. He's turned it around, 10-0, hasn't lost, all those things. I don't know if Curt Cignetti is a better coach than Ryan Day. Like, I get it. The approval rating for Curt Cignetti is through the roof right now. Ryan Day's approval rating is not, to say the least. But Ryan Day's lost. He's lost 9 games in 7 years at Ohio State. Sure, Curt Cignetti won games at James Madison, and he won games on the Division II level, and he coached at Alabama a long time ago, and all those things. But it's different in the Big Ten. Like, congrats, Curt Cignetti. You've beaten a bunch of bad Big Ten teams by a lot. That's great. I've seen Ryan Day win a lot of big games at Ohio State. Only lost 9 games in 7 years. That guy's a good coach. He's won the Sugar Bowl. He's won the Rose Bowl. He's taken his team to the college football playoff final. Okay? Like, Ryan Day is a good football coach, and I don't think that there's much of a gap between these coaches either. And so for me, the game comes down to one thing and one thing only. How does the offensive line for each group hold up? For Ohio State, they are patching this thing together, right? Starting left tackle goes out for the year. Earlier in the year, they're starting center, Torrey's Achilles. He's out for the year. How is Ohio State going to shift this offensive line around and hold up against a good Indiana front, an Indiana front that leads the Big Ten in sacks, right? This Indiana front that has dominated other teams in the run game. How does Ohio State's, patched up offensive line hold up against a good and what has been dominant front four from Indiana? And then for Indiana, when you look at the roster, it is a lot of group of 5 transfers, right? Curtis Rourke, Pons, right? Like, just go down the list. A lot of the skill guys and even the defensive linemen are group of 5 transfers. The offensive line, however, is not. 4 returners from Indiana last year, and then a transfer in from another Power 4 school. Okay, so this is an offensive line that has played against Ohio State before, has played against high-level competition before, right? So how do they hold up? Because they got pushed around quite a bit against Michigan, right? Michigan's got, those 2 interior defensive linemen who are probably going to get drafted really high this year, and they just kind of blew up a lot of Indiana's run game. How does Indiana deal with a talented front from Ohio State? Right? That's what this game is going to be entirely about, because I don't think that there's a huge gap between quarterbacks. If you want to tell me that Ohio State has better skill position players, they probably do, but it's hard to give your wide receivers the football if Will Howard is being chased around all day. Right? It's hard to give, Keyshawn Judkins room to run if their offensive line can't generate a push. That is where this game is going to be won and lost, and neither one of these quarterbacks are superhero-like enough to save the day for their team. It is all about the trenches this week in Columbus. Whoever wins the battle of the trenches is going to win this game. If Ohio State can disrupt Rourke and stop the run game like Michigan did, then Ohio State's probably going to win. And if Indiana can get after Will Howard and limit the run game, then Indiana's probably going to win. It is truly that simple. And I think the one advantage, though, and the one thing that I haven't heard people mention enough is the fact that Indiana is coming off of a bye week. That is a huge advantage in this game. And last week, because they were on a bye week, Curt Cignetti, he went on, Big Noon with Urban Meyer and all those guys, and he was asked about this upcoming game against Ohio State. And I love his answer. Here's Curt Cignetti a week ago talking about this game against Ohio State.
Just talking about this matchup, I mean, it arguably could be the biggest game in Indiana football history.
Yeah, I love when you guys say stuff like that. It makes me laugh.
But name a bigger one.
I mean, look,
name a bigger
we're
one.
We're open this week, and we treated it like every other open week. You know, we got recharged, re-energized, and we slow cooked on the next opponent a little bit. The coaches didn't slow cook, but in terms of installation. You know, we'll approach this like any other game because that's how it's a big game because it's the next game. And if there was a better way to prepare for a, quote, big game, we would prepare that way every week. So, I mean, you know, we're process-driven, process-oriented. We got to stack moments and days, put ourselves in the best position to have success Saturday, play our game, and play it well.
Curt Cignetti right there. That was him last week on Big Noon Kickoff, the early morning Fox pregame show. I love him so much. I love his demeanor. I love that he says that there was a better way to prepare for big games than we'd prepare for all our games that way. It's such a great line, and it's so incredibly true. And look, he's right. Like, this is a big game. The guy who asked him the question, I think it was Matt Leinart. I'm honestly not sure. I don't remember. But like, he brings up that this could potentially be the biggest game in Indiana football history. I don't know Indiana's football history well enough to say that, but he's right in the idea that this is definitely the biggest game in a long time. Like, when was the last time Indiana played in a big game? 4 years ago. 4 years ago yesterday. And Ohio State, over the last 4 years, has played in a lot of big games. It's part of why you go to Ohio State. Ryan Day, his coaches, Chip Kelly, you know, a guy who was a head coach in a national championship game. You know, I guess that was, over a decade ago. But still, all the players at Ohio State are used to this. They played Penn State earlier in the year. That was a big game, and that game was on the road. For most teams, I would be worried about them in Indiana's spot because going from playing against Maryland at home, where people are leaving at halftime, to going to Columbus on the road with a college football playoff spot on the line is completely different. And once again, those guys at Ohio State, like, they're used to it, right? They played in big games last year. They're going to play in more next year. They just know it. And when you show up at Indiana, that's not always the expectation. It's just not. And so when you have a new up and coming team that hasn't played in very many big games, it can be a little worrisome. Are they going to come out tight? Are they going to come out jittery? Like what is going to happen? How are they going to handle the important moments of a big game? And teams that haven't played in many big games can be a little shaky. But with Indiana, I'm not worried at all because their leader, Coach Cignetti, carries himself in a way that it's clear that he just expects to win everything. He's calm, he's cool, he's collected. He himself has coached in big games because he coached at Alabama with Nick Saban, okay? He's going to be fine, and I think because of that, because of the way that he leads and the way that he coaches, like when he said in that clip that they are process-driven, which is something that a lot of teams say, but with Coach Cignetti, I actually believe him when he says that. When you're process-driven, truly, results and things don't matter. Like, they just don't. You just know that if you prepare properly, and I fully believe that Indiana has because they've had 2 weeks to do it. When you prepare properly, like, you just have an extra little oomph, an extra little bit of confidence. So I don't think that this game or any moment is going to be too big for the Hoosiers tomorrow. I think we're going to get a fantastic game. I think the game is going to be close. With that being said, I'm going to take Ohio State to win. It's no disrespect to Indiana. If you think that it is, just go listen to my show all week. Please go back. You can find them on YouTube. Go listen to me just rant and rave about how good I think that this Indiana team is. But I haven't seen it. I haven't seen them win big games in my lifetime. And the first time you play in big games, I just don't trust you. I just don't. I'm sorry. Meanwhile, Ohio State has won games like this my entire life. So with that being said, Indiana is more than capable of winning this game. The 11.5 point line is insane to me. So I like Ohio State to win, but I think Indiana covers that 11.5 point spread. That is my official prediction for the game tomorrow. Can't wait to have Zack Gray at ZG the Grapevine on the show. He's coming up at 11 o'clock. That's about 45 minutes away. He's going to be an absolute joy to talk to about this game on Saturday. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, we get to play the what if game, because that's what college football is at this point in the year. What if Indiana loses? What if Ohio State loses? How does that impact the college football playoff standings and all of those things? I'm going to give you all my thoughts on that when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
I'm to the room.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you guys are having a nice week. Happy Friday. Indiana on the road at Ohio State tomorrow. You know, before I took this job, if you told me that in late November I'd be leading a Friday show with Indiana as opposed to the Colts, I wouldn't have believed you, right? Like, this entire run that they've had this year is completely unprecedented. I mean, 10-0 going into Columbus, ranked 5th in the country. We knew it was possible given how easy the schedule was for Indiana before the year started. But the fact that it's actually happening, I mean, pretty insane. So what happens if Indiana loses? How important is this game? Obviously, it's very important because if they win, they're essentially a lock for the college football playoff. But, you know, like, this is something that has to be discussed. Like what if Indiana loses? Right? Like, this has been a topic all week, and it's more like, I feel like the topic has been less of what if and more of when Indiana loses. Once again, people aren't giving Indiana a shot in this game, which I think is insane. Right? So you have people asking the question, like, what if they get blown out? What if they lose by 3? What if they lose by 21? What if this? What if that happens? And my thing is, like, it's not that complicated. I really don't think that it is. Like, let's just look at the college football playoff. And I know that there's no history to fall back on of the 12-team college football playoff, but we can look at the 4-team college football playoff and see how they rank teams in the past and figure things out from there. If they lose, if Indiana loses tomorrow, whether it's by 3, 1, 7, 27, 107, whatever it is, if they lose tomorrow, I fully expect for the College Football Playoff Committee to keep them out. That is my full expectation. I think that Indiana has to win tomorrow to get in because they aren't a college football powerhouse and they don't have any signature wins. If you don't believe me, take a look at BYU. BYU was ranked 6th in the country 2 weeks ago with a big win over SMU. That is a top 15 ranked team in the country. You can go to that game, you can point at it and say, look, BYU beat a good SMU team. Okay, you can go to it, you can point to it. And the College Football Playoff Committee did not care in the slightest. Okay, so BYU with a signature win over SMU was ranked 6th, undefeated. They lost to Kansas, and they plummeted. They dropped 8 spots in the rankings. Okay, and now they're on the outside looking in. They essentially have to win their conference championship to make the college football playoff. And I can very easily picture them doing the same thing to Indiana. Okay, like if Indiana goes in there and they get blown out, they're going to plummet in the standings. If they go in there and they lose on the last second field goal, you know, the committee will probably do something like drop them to like 11, where they're like 1 spot away from getting in, to where they'll need someone to lose to get in. Okay, that is my expectation for what the College Football Playoff Committee is going to do to Indiana. They are going to screw Indiana over. That is my official prediction for what's going to happen if Indiana loses this game. Okay, I don't agree with it, right? I've been arguing all week that Indiana is one of the 12 best teams in the country, and when you watch them play football, it's pretty clear. Sadly, though, that's not what people care about. They care about resumes and, you know, all those types of things more than they care about getting the 12 best teams in, right? Even though, you know, and I'm very firmly on the side of Indiana as one of the 12 best teams in the country. But the thing, if they lose, is like you have to answer these questions of how do you keep, you know, probably 11-1 Indiana, whose best win's Washington. How do you keep, you know, signature winless Indiana out? Or how do you put them in over Georgia, you know, who's probably going to finish at 10-2 with wins over Clemson, Tennessee, and Texas? And they don't have a bad loss. It's like, how do you put 11-1 Indiana in over probably 10-2 Alabama when Alabama's beaten Georgia, South Carolina, Missouri, and LSU? All 4 of those wins are better than any of Indiana's. Okay, the losses to Vanderbilt and Tennessee aren't that bad either. How do you keep, you know, Tennessee out instead of, or how do you put Indiana in over Tennessee, right? Who's got a win over Alabama? Like, the resume just won't stack up to these SEC teams, and we know that there is SEC bias. As a guy that grew up as an SEC fan, go Hogs, even though they suck. I'm fully aware that like SEC bias is a thing. And if the College Football Playoff Committee has an excuse to put in Alabama or Georgia or Tennessee or Texas A&M or whoever it is in over Indiana, then they are going to. There's not a single doubt in my mind. So the best way for Indiana to get in is just to win tomorrow. Just go into Columbus and win. It's not that hard. They have to win tomorrow. Okay? Like, they just don't have the signature wins to boost them over if they lose. And they don't have the name bias for the committee to buy into them the same way that the committee has bought into Penn State, despite them not having a single signature win, and how they've bought into Notre Dame, despite them losing to Northern Illinois. And to be fair to Notre Dame, they do have that win over Texas A&M. That is impressive. Okay. Heath Har. Yeah, you're right. Just beat Ohio State. Not that hard. Just go in there and beat them, and the problem's solved. But which leads me to what is really the more interesting question. What happens if Ohio State loses? Okay, like what does Ohio State do? Do they make the playoff? Right? Like, there's going to be all these questions that funnel out of this. I want Indiana to win because if Ohio State loses, things become just incredibly interesting, incredibly quickly, right? They go from the consensus second best team in the country to having a resume similar to Georgia and Alabama and Tennessee and all these other SEC teams with 2 losses. Now, if Ohio State loses, they will still make the playoff. There's not a doubt in my mind. Okay? Because they would have that one good win, right? You'd be able to go back and point and say, well, they did beat Penn State on the road in Happy Valley. We got Penn State ranked 4th. You know, like that's a good, impressive win. They have to, stay in the top 12, right? So you could point to that. And the other thing would be that they'd have the 2 best losses in the country. A loss to number 1 Oregon on the road, and a loss to likely, because if Indiana wins, they're going to move up, and a loss to likely number 2 Indiana. So they would have 2 losses, sure, but they would be the highest ranked 2-loss team in the country. So they'd be fine. I had someone throw in the chat. I want to make sure I give credit to this. Ridger 1970 saying that if Indiana beats Ohio State, they'll fire Ryan Day. I don't think that's the case. I think Ryan Day only gets fired if he loses to Michigan once again. Because once again, like, Ryan Day's been the head coach at Ohio State for 7 years. He's lost 9 games. And nobody was upset with him. A little frustrated, sure. No one was upset with him until he lost to Michigan 2 times in a row. Once again, Zack Gray is going to join me coming up at 11 o'clock. Cannot wait. I cannot wait to have him on, because he's not only a fantastic gambler who I think made a bunch of money yesterday betting college basketball, but he's also a huge Ohio State fan, born and raised there. And so it'll be just a lot of fun to have him on and to talk about that upcoming game. Now, Colts, Lions, I'm going to talk about that here in about 10 minutes. But before we head to break and we do all those fun things, I want to quickly give out, because I forgot to give this out last week, the Kirk Cousins bet of the week. If you're new to the program, I give out a Kirk Cousins bet of the week every single week. It is my favorite segment here on the show. So basically, Kirk Cousins had this incredible quote where he talked about going on the road and winning games.
Walk into your trap, take over your trap. This is the line he would say. You go into someone else's stadium and you try to assert yourself.
Kirk Cousins right there. Walk in your trap, take over your trap. Going on the road to a hostile environment and pulling off the win. That is what the Kirk Cousins bet of the week is all about, because that quote is simply amazing. There's no other way to really put it. So, so for this week, the Kirk Cousins bet of the week, where we pick a road underdog on the money line. We're taking a road underdog on the money line. The pick this week was incredibly easy because none of the other games made sense to pick. As of right now, we are 3-1 with our Kirk Cousins bets of the week. Hopefully you've been betting these things, because you're definitely up right now if you have been. So for this week, I'm taking the 49ers on the money line as 3-point underdogs on the road at Lambeau Field, taking on the Green Bay Packers. Now, I don't like this pick. From the perspective of before the year started, I said that the 49ers would miss the playoffs. And if they lose this game, which obviously they're predicted to, they're 3-point dogs, then like they'd fall to 5-6, and the chances of them missing the playoffs go up a lot if that happens. So from that perspective, I kind of hope they lose. But from a making money perspective, I hope they win. Okay, I've been tough on the Niners all year, but they are still incredibly talented. Okay, and when you look at how road underdogs win, really just underdogs in general, like I'm going to talk about the Colts game coming up here in about 10 minutes or so, and you're going to kind of see this woven throughout. Like the road to underdogs winning games, especially on the road, is good quarterback play, which the 49ers have. Like I trust Brock Purdy. I think that you should trust Brock Purdy. See Mahomes or Josh Allen or anybody like that. No, but like he takes care of the ball. He runs that Kyle Shanahan offense to perfection. They have Christian McCaffrey back. They can run the crap out of the football. I mean, like they are still talented, and they have a quarterback who is capable of winning tough games on the road. Now, the other thing that you have to have, in addition to good quarterback play to win as an underdog, is you have to force turnovers. And, there's obviously a lot of attention paid to, the 49ers and this offense that they have that's, incredibly dynamic, and Deebo Samuel and McCaffrey and Kittle and, Juan Jennings, right? Because Brandon Ayuk's out for the rest of the year, and Juwan Jennings is just a monster. Anyway, and so in addition to that, hyper explosive offense, they also have a fantastic defense. Fred Warner has been the best linebacker in football for several years now. Their secondary is good. They get after the quarterback. And importantly here, they're playing a quarterback in Jordan Love who loves to throw interceptions. He's thrown 11 interceptions on the year. Okay, this guy wants to turn the football over. And it is not far-fetched to think that the 49ers could go in there, Jordan Love throws like 3 picks, and then that's it. And then it's like, oh, okay, this game's over. The 49ers are up by 2 touchdowns because Jordan Love threw three interceptions. Like that is not like that's very easy to kind of come. It's easy to come to that conclusion. So, and I'll be honest, part of why I picked this game is because it's just the best option. Okay, like I like the idea of the 49ers beating the Packers on the road more than I like the Patriots, who are 7-point dogs, beating the Dolphins on the road, or the Titans winning their 7-point dogs, or the Cowboys beating the Commanders as 10.5-point underdogs. Like this is clearly the play for the Kirk Cousins bet of the week, where we take an underdog that's playing on the road on the money line. We are 3-1 right now. Hopefully, we'll be 4-1 after this week, because 4-1, I mean, that you're reining in the cash for that. And hopefully, in addition to, predicting that for the 49ers to go on the road and win, hopefully the Colts win, right? Because they're 5-6. You win this week, you're 6-6, and your playoff hopes are incredibly alive. Whereas if you lose, you have to win out, or you got to get help from several other teams. So hopefully the Colts are able to pull off that game. I'm going to get into that game when we come back here in about 4 minutes. Once again, though, coming up 11 o'clock, 27 minutes away, Zack Gray at ZG, the Grapevine on Twitter. He is set to join the show at 11, and we're going to talk Ohio State, Indiana, and a little bit of gambling as well. Once again, that's at 11. When we come back here in 4 minutes, my thoughts on Colts versus Lions.
More winners, more often. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket? Hopefully you guys are having a nice week. So I made my Kirk Cousins bet of the week, right? You know, I said pretty proudly that I like the 49ers +3 to win on the money line on the road, because that is what the Kirk Cousins bet of the week calls for, to take an underdog on the road on the money line. And then shout out to the chat. Just found out Brock Purdy's not going to play this week. But I'm going to roll with it anyway. Say, Jonathan, why? They don't have Brock Purdy. Well, look, it's Kyle Shanahan. That system's going to run itself. And they're either going to play Josh Dobbs, backup quarterback legend, or they're going to play Brandon Allen, Arkansas Razorback legend. And I'm not betting against Brandon Allen. So we're going to roll with it. The pick is official. 49ers, underdogs on the road on the money line against the Packers. That is still the official Kirk Cousins bet of the week. Let's get into the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Detroit Lions. While Indiana tomorrow is going on the road to take on arguably the best team in all of college football, the Colts are hosting the best football team in the NFL. Tough opponents this week for Indiana football teams. I don't count Purdue. I don't even know who they're playing, but they're not a real football team, so we don't worry about them. When it comes to the Lions, it's definitely the best offense in the NFL. Okay, and they're going to score points. There's no doubt about that in my mind on Sunday. I mean, they're averaging 33 points per game, and Shane Steichen was asked earlier this week during a press conference about just this Lions team. Why are they so good? What is he seeing? And here's what Shane Steichen had to say about the Lions.
Very explosive, all three phases. Their offense is obviously elite right now. I mean, they're scoring 33 points a game. Quarterback's playing at a high level. The two wideouts are legit. The two backs are legit. The offensive line's legit. Defensively, they're playing really good too. I know they're number one in third down defensively. Top 10 in almost every category, especially all three phases. So they're playing really good football, complimentary football. But the great thing is, we get to play them at home, which we're really excited about and excited for the opportunity and the challenge. I mean, they're tough on all three phases. It definitely shows. All those guys are flying around, making plays. They're having fun doing it.
Tough, talented. That is who this Detroit Lions team is, according to Indianapolis Colts head coach Shane Steichen. This is, oh man, this is going to be tough. It's going to be a tough week. I mean, you heard Shane Steichen right there. He hit every part of the Lions right there. The offense, it's the best in the NFL. 33 points a game, 6th in passing yards per game, 3rd in rushing yards per game, 3rd in total offense. I mean, they're just loaded up. Like, great 1-2 punch at running back, great wide receivers. Jared Goff's dealing right now. Potentially could be the MVP. Just saying. The defense, the best third down defense in the NFL, right? Like, they're so good, right? And to top it all off, their kicker's been awesome as well. I mean, they are extremely complete. It's why I think they're the best team in the NFL. On Tuesdays, I do Top 10 Tuesday, where I rank the 10 best teams in the NFL. They've been number one for the last 2 weeks, and I think they've been top 3 all year. Okay, like they are clearly a cut above when you look at just this team and how good and how talented they are. Okay, and that's why the Colts are 7.5-point underdogs. You can find it at 7 at some other places, and that line honestly feels right. There's not a doubt in my mind that the Detroit Lions are better than the Indianapolis Colts are. Not a single doubt in my mind. And look, in order for the Colts to win, what they have to do is relatively simple. They have to play well, obviously. But more importantly, they have to avoid mistakes. Okay, in the NFL, if you win the turnover battle, your chances of winning go up pretty highly. Okay, especially for a team like the Colts, who, despite the 5-6 record, have done a good job of keeping games close. If they can just force a couple turnovers, they're going to have a great opportunity to win the game. It almost has to happen. Okay, if they don't win the turnover battle, if it's 0-0 or 1-1, or if they lose the turnover battle, then I just don't see a way for the Colts to win this game. The offense simply isn't good enough to keep pace with the Lions. Like, I love Anthony Richardson. Okay, I love the potential. I love the talent. The dude is immensely talented. I mean, like, it's incredible, kind of the leap that we saw from, when he was between when he was benched, those 2 weeks to now. I mean, the dude once again is just incredibly talented, and he's really good. But with that being said, we just haven't seen enough from him to really have faith, or I haven't seen enough from him, at least, to really have faith in his ability to go touchdown for touchdown with the Detroit Lions. Now, if he plays the way that he did last week against the Jets, then maybe, just maybe, he could. I played this audio yesterday, but I want to play it again. Here's Dan Campbell talking about Anthony Richardson and the talent. And if the talent shows up in full force like it did last week against the Jets, then maybe, just maybe, he gives the Colts a chance to beat this Lions team.
As you saw was last week really at his best. I'm not even sure you can go back to early in the year, because I feel like they've taken the handcuffs off of him and allowed him to just go. And I think it's, there's a lot of things to where, you got to be careful. That's your guy. You run him too much, he gets hit, he gets injured, and I think now it's not, all bets are off, and we got to get first downs, we got to score touchdowns, and you got to lead us to it. And so when you run him the way you run him, and with the different schemes that they're doing it with, I mean, they got quarterback power, they got the RPO, they got the read run, they've got the play action off of that. It's and then he can scramble, and then if he is in the pocket and you got your arms around him, trying to bring him to the ground, he'll just stiff arm you off of him. He'll just press you off and then throw it down the field, and it's rare. His strength, his ability to run, and he really does have a nice deep ball. He's an accurate passer down the field. I mean, deep. So that's what makes him dangerous. It's all encompassing is what it is. And when you accompany that by getting this halfback going, you get Taylor going, and all of a sudden, man, this becomes a very dangerous offense. So it's really no different than anything else. We cannot allow them to get this run game going, because if they do, it's going to be tough.
Dan Campbell, Lions head coach, right there, highlighting just the talents of Anthony Richardson and how great this offense can be. And once again, if Anthony Richardson is the guy that he was last week against the Jets, completing 67% of his passes, scoring 3 touchdowns, running the ball well in the red zone, like, if he's that guy, then the Colts could potentially win this game without forcing turnovers. But that still really feels like the thing that has to happen for the Colts. They have got to force turnovers, because, once again, as great as Richardson was last week, I don't like, it's not fair of us to expect him to be that great again, given what we've seen in the 10 starts before that. Okay, hopefully he is. He's going to have to be good in order to win this game, but I don't expect him to complete 67% of his passes again. I don't think that that's a fair expectation. And part of winning the turnover battle, which is the most important thing for the Colts on Sunday, not like that obviously means forcing turnovers, right? They need to force Buckner to force a fumble. They need Kenny Moore to make a play on the ball and pick off Jared Goff and things like that. That obviously has to happen, but they also have to avoid the catastrophic plays. And throughout the season, Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor have had some issues on those read option exchanges. They've fumbled too many of them. They had another one last week. Here is Jonathan Taylor addressing those issues and talking a little bit on how to fix them.
Number one, well, for him, I mean, I know quarterback is different. They can get the snap any which way. So I know that plays a big factor into it of, him getting his feet right. And then for me, I'm just making sure that I'm great on my paths, whether it's a flat, whether it's downhill, making sure that I'm where I need to be so that Anthony can just focus on his job solely, because it is a lot.
That was Jonathan Taylor right there talking about the issues that they've had on the exchange. Those things can't happen on Sunday. Like, they just can't, right? Like, you can't have negative plays against this defense. You can't have negative plays against any defense, if we're being completely and totally honest about it. Okay, but especially against this one that's so great on third down. Like, if you get into 2nd and 15 and then you're working just to get to 3rd and 8, and then it's 3rd and 8, and you got to throw it, and you got to worry about Brian Branch and Joseph and all these dudes, because that's what the Lions have. They have dudes everywhere on defense. Then like you're going to be in trouble. You can't have those fumbled snaps. You can't turn the ball over, because if those things happen against the Lions defense, like you're toast. There's no other way to put it. And the best way for this Colts team to get going, and you heard it in that Coach Campbell clip where he talks about, how dangerous this offense can be when they run the football. The most important thing for the Colts is they have to run the ball. And more importantly, like last week, they have to stay committed. They cannot give up on running the football too early. Here's Jonathan Taylor talking about the importance of staying committed to the run.
And I think what you just mentioned is just staying committed. A lot of teams try to have teams shy away from it so that, they can kind of change, their scheme, their plan, what they're doing. But for us, staying committed and being able to stay true to that, it forces them to stay true and saying, okay, well, these guys are going to stick with it. So just being able to keep that mindset, keep working, and eventually, those big runs will come.
Jonathan Taylor right there talking about the importance of staying committed to the run. The big run didn't come last week. Okay, it didn't come, right? They didn't run the ball very well at all. But the commitment of running the football no matter what is incredibly important for the Colts, because it just makes things easier for Anthony Richardson. That is still the biggest thing for the Colts, because it's hard to win football games in the NFL when your quarterback doesn't play well. And for Anthony Richardson, a guy who hasn't played a ton of football, a guy who's still learning, even though, once again, he was great last week against the Jets. He was great last week against the Jets because the Colts made things easy for him, right? They gave him some easy throws. Okay, they ran the crap out of Jonathan Taylor. He got 24 carries, 25 touches total. That needs to be a repeat thing this week. They need to give Jonathan Taylor plenty of opportunities to change the game on his own. Okay, that has to happen. It has to happen for the Colts to have a chance to win this game. Jonathan Taylor has to be good. They've got to figure out a way to run the football and take some of the pressure off of Anthony Richardson. In addition to that, give him easy throws, okay, slants, drags, all those things. The 4-yard out route that he hit last week, like, let him keep throwing those. Is he going to miss a couple of them? Sure. I'm sure that he will, but Patrick Mahomes misses throws every week. Josh Allen misses throws every week. It happens, okay? Like, you're not going to put every ball, you're not going to place every ball perfectly. It's not going to happen no matter who you are. So make life easy on Anthony Richardson. Give him opportunities to run the ball with Jonathan Taylor, and just kind of see where things go from there. Because if you have success running the football, Dan Campbell said it, this offense goes to a different level. And the offense needs to go to a different level this week, because not only are they playing against this tough Lions team that's going to score a bunch of points and has good defense, they're also playing to make the playoffs. 5-6. And look, if you fall to 5-7, because of how easy the Colts schedule is down the stretch, the playoffs are still in play. Okay. It's the Titans at home. It's Jacksonville at home. They play the Patriots. The only tough game in that stretch is at the Broncos. And that game is going to be huge in terms of playoff implications and tiebreakers and all those things. And like, if you can just get to 6-6, you give yourself some breathing room. Okay. Whereas if you fall to 5-7, you got to win 5 in a row. Because as you watch just the way that the NFL has been unfolding, like, the Broncos seem like a legit threat to get to 10 wins. The Chargers look like they're going to get to 10 wins. The, Ravens and Steelers, who are battling it out for the lead in the AFC North, like, whichever one comes in second is still probably going to get to 10 wins, right? The Ravens have already won 7 games. The Steelers have already won 8. So 10 wins kind of seems like that magic number. And getting there from 6-6 with 7 games left is way easier than getting there from, 5-7 with 6 games left, right? No, that's not right. I'm bad at math. 5 games left? Is that right? I don't know. I don't know how math works. I just know it's easier to get to 10-7 when you're at 6-6 as opposed to 5-7. So this game's just incredibly important. I feel like something weird is going to happen this week, just in the world of the NFL, probably in college football too. Just because, like, there's very few big headliner games, and there's plenty of opportunities for weird things to happen. For example, the Colts going on the road and the Colts just beating the Lions, who, once again, like, they're favored by 7.5. It feels like everybody's on them. This is a perfect sack man bet. Take the Colts because the Colts apparently aren't any good, and I'm sure that's what everyone is saying right about now. So Indiana taking on Ohio State tomorrow. That is still the biggest thing. Like, yes, I'm excited to watch the Colts play the Lions because I love the NFL, but I am incredibly excited for tomorrow. Ohio State, Indiana. I've been watching this Indiana team. They're good, and I'm ready for the rest of the college football world to experience how good this Indiana Hoosiers team is. Okay, like, I'm gonna say it again. If you've seen them play, then you know. Then you know how good this team is. I'm very excited to have my good buddy, guy who comes on every Friday. He's going to join me here in about 5 minutes. Zack Gray. He's going to give out some bets. It's college basketball season. He bets college basketball better than anyone that I know. It's not like better than anyone that I know. Not really close. And so he's going to join me here in about 5 minutes, and we're going to talk not only about gambling and who to bet on and all those things, but we're also going to get into Ohio State, Indiana, because he's a huge Ohio State fan. And he's an honest Ohio State fan. There aren't too many of those. So can't wait to have him on coming up here in about 5 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice week. My week just got better because Zack Gray is joining the program, professional sports gambler and a really good friend of mine. Zack, what's going on, man?
Hello, Indiana.
You sound really cheerful right now. From an audience that doesn't know, Zack Gray is an Ohio State fan, and I'm sure that he won't be so cheerful tomorrow at around 3:30.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna be a nervous wreck no matter what, but I'm gonna be arrogant until kickoff, that's for sure. And then every little play that goes wrong, I was like, we lost, we're done. They're gonna beat us. So that's how that'll go.
Well, I mean, you're an Ohio State fan. I wouldn't expect anything less than the arrogance that will be shown before kickoff, because that's just how.
Feels like a shot.
I mean, I'm just not you specifically, but like Ohio State fans, they can be a little annoying. I think they can, at least. But then again, when you win as much as they do, you're allowed to be, right?
Most consistent college football program of all time. So yeah, we'll take that.
Fair enough. So very quickly, Zack, before we talk about the game, it is college basketball season, and I think you said it on here last week. You bet college basketball better than anything else, and I'm a witness to it. So I know that you have a college basketball bet that you want to give out. You hit last week, Alabama and taking Purdue over Alabama. So what do you have for us this week?
Yeah, so real quick, just to kind of highlight some things about the Patreon, if you don't mind.
Of course.
So last night, they have the tournaments during Feast Week, and you don't really know what the matchups are going to be until after the games are played because it's a bracket style. So last night, I'm going back in, crunching the numbers, trying to get ready for today, and I give out 2 bets last night for games that were decided yesterday. So, for example, Miami and Oklahoma State. I sent it out to my Patreon members last night at over 151.5. If you check right now, it's at 157.5. So if you're subscribed, you would have gotten 6 points of value just based off me giving that out last night. Same thing on the other side with JMU, UC, and UC San Diego. I gave out JMU plus 3.5. They were a 3.5 point dog last night. They are now a 2.5 point favorite. So just to give some idea about, me getting these out to you early, finding the value early, getting the best line possible. But today, I think I'm going to follow my guy on Twitter. His name is @3PointSniper. My projections back this up, but I'm going Virginia plus 11.5 against St. John's today.
Okay, nice. I like it. What about, go ahead.
So real quick, I think everybody saw the thriller between Baylor and St. John's last night.
Oh yeah.
Early in the season, not used to playing back-to-backs, tired legs, travel. I think that adds to the reasoning for me to take a Virginia plus 11.5. Even though I watched the Virginia game last night and they look terrible, they look slow, they look sloppy. But I just think that they kill it just enough to kind of stay close under that 10-point mark. And I think St. John's shows some of that fatigue probably late in the second half to make it a closer game than it should be, and probably a closer game on the scoreboard than what the game actually indicated. So the projections are in line here. The projections say somewhere around 7 or 8. And then, add on that outside factor of a double overtime game, first time playing a back-to-back, a team that just lost, trying to, get that geared up again. I think it's a good play.
Okay, sounds good. And then I know you said off the air, once again, joined by good friend Zack Gray, professional sports gambler. He's giving out picks. Virginia plus 11 today in college hoops. And then I know you said you had a college football bet as well.
Yeah, I think I'm going to stick with the JMU trend here and go James Madison -7 against App State. I remember when we did our college football preview, I was kind of like, don't sleep on JMU. Just because Signetti left, they're still good. They're still talented. They're sitting at 8-2. They lost a couple games. You probably wouldn't want to see them lose. They lost to Georgia Southern, who's god awful. But I think JMU is good. I think they're going to finish out their season, strong here. down the stretch. App State has been pretty underwhelming. My projections say this is a 10-plus point game. Line's at 7. I think there's good value there for, especially at the 7. That's a key number. You don't want to get hit. You don't want to take a 7.5 and they win 28-21. So really look and try to find that best number you can. I think 7 works. And yeah, give me James Madison twice.
Okay, let's go. Let's go. So speaking of lines, everyone here has sat back and stared at this Indiana-Ohio State line shoot up. You don't have to give us your bet, but is the 11.5 point line, is that around where your projection is?
So Jay Smith, I think it got up to 14, right?
Yeah, I think it got all the way up to 14, and then it came back down.
So it's back down to 10.5. My projections, I'll just tell you guys, I'm not betting the game just because, unless there's a severe edge there, I don't want to let my personal bias get involved. My projections say like 12.5. So I think the initial line was right on the money. Obviously handle and amount of bets coming through will kind of make that line fluctuate. But I think it's a bad sign for Indiana when you see a line get all the way up to 14.5 and then dump back down. That means there's some money on both sides, but enough money to go all the way up to 14, but settle it around where it opened. To me, that just smells like, sharp money is understanding that there's a huge talent discrepancy here. I don't think people talk enough about how Indiana is, not a physically imposing team. I don't think they're going to match up athletically, size-wise with Ohio State. Yeah, we'll get into it, but I just think that if you had a 10.5 available and you weren't a diehard Ohio State fan, I would think about firing on that.
Okay, sounds good. So I the way that you just spoke, I'm assuming I know you answered my next question. Once again, Zack Gray, not only the best sports gambler I know, go follow him on Twitter at ZG the Grapevine. Check out his Patreon, linked in his bio, which gives you tools to make better bets. He also gives out some of his own as well. Based on everything that you just said about Ohio State, also Zach he's from Ohio. He's a huge Ohio State fan. I think I know your answer to this next question, but how much of a chance do you think Indiana has tomorrow?
0. And I don't say that. And
okay.
Well, so I want to be very clear about my perspective on this game, right? I respect Indiana as a football team. I respect Signetti. I respect, their players that have came in and exceeded expectations. Rourke. I saw him when he was at Ohio. I know they have a defensive end that's going to probably break some type of Indiana record for sacks, and they have good players, and I respect that. But you ain't ready for the big leagues, man. Like this isn't a microwave sport. Like, I liken this to when Michigan State and Mel Tucker came into the shoe, in the top 10 as well and got beat 56-7. Like, this is a whole new ball game, Hoosier fans. Like, this is real. Like, you haven't beaten Ohio State since 1988. Do you really think that this version of Ohio State is going to be the first team to lose to Indiana since then? There's a clear physical advantage, speed, size, skill, coaching. And yes, I said coaching. There's just no advantages for this Indiana team. And to think you're going to walk into Ohio Stadium with Ohio State's, with the expectations and the pressure that the coaching staff has, that the players have, that the fans have, and I think you're going to walk out with a win in year 1 of Signetti, you've got to be kidding me, honestly. Like, and I don't mean to say that. I don't want to sound I'm being
you're good.
Serious. I'm trying to be respectful about it, but let's be honest. I've thought about this. I've tried to poke holes in this. I do at every Ohio State game. I try to poke holes in why I'm wrong. I just can't see it, man. I just can't.
Joined by Zack Gray, professional sports gambler. He's also a huge Ohio State fan. So we're talking IU versus Ohio State tomorrow at noon. Here's my question, because I know you just said that you try to poke holes in every Ohio State game as to why they could lose. How concerned are you about not only the left tackle now being out for the rest of the year, but Ohio State starting center towards Achilles? He's out as well. Indiana leads the Big Ten in sacks. Like, are you concerned about that part at all?
Honestly, I mean, obviously you lose your best offensive lineman, you're going to be a little concerned. But if I think Ohio State was prepared, has people, 2 deep, 3 deep that can kind of lessen the blow. So the guy that they're going to put at center tomorrow, he started every single game last year. He was a full-time starter at center last year. He has big game reps. He played against Michigan. He played against Penn State. He has those big game reps, and he has played really well since he got inserted to the starting lineup this year. And then the guy that they're moving to left guard started the season there. So when Donovan Jackson was out for 3 games. So the guys that they're plugging in, they're familiar with their positions. They're not moving positions, and they're experienced. So if there was any type of blow that they could take, it was an interior lineman blow on the offensive line. Now, a tackle gets hurt tomorrow, and it's five alarm fire. Like, they don't have anything behind the 2 guys they have at tackle right now, especially since they're already playing their initial starting left guard at left tackle. So interior O-line, I'm comfortable with filling the gaps, and I don't think it's going to be an issue. And to be honest with you, I think for the way Indiana rushes the passer, plays right into the strengths of Ohio State's offensive line. I think that for the most part, Indiana's D-line is undersized. I think that they're not going to be able to push around Ohio State. I think they can match the speed as well. And I expect Ohio State to run the ball really effectively. And that offensive line is going to look, just like an offensive line at Ohio State would, to be honest.
Okay, fair enough. This is why we have you on, because you know who's going to play backup center at Ohio State. I didn't know that. Once again, joined by Zack Gray, professional sports gambler, also a huge Ohio State fan, talking about that big game tomorrow. Here's my thing. What are your thoughts on Will Howard? Because when I look at Ohio State, like, the talent is abundant. I mean, because you're right. Like, they're more talented than Indiana at every single spot. I don't know, man. Like, for big games, I always want to look at who's playing quarterback, and I just don't think that the gap between Will Howard and Curtis Rourke is that large. Like, if you wanted to tell me that Will Howard was better, like, sure, that's fine. But at the same time, if you want to tell me that you thought Rourke was better, I'd say that's okay too. Like, does the lack of a talent gap at quarterback increase the chances of an upset for Indiana or lessen them?
I think if you look at their stats, they're right neck and neck in efficiency and all of the quarterback stats we track. So, they're neck and neck. I will say we were on this show after the Oregon game, and we're talking about how impressed we were with Will Howard. He went toe-to-toe with Dylan Gabriel in Eugene. Besides the pick 6 early against Penn State, he controlled the offense and sealed the deal. So Will Howard has played in these big games, top 5. He's played in 2 top 5 matchups already this year and has played well. And I think that's advantage of Ohio State, right? Like, Will Howard has done this before this year. Curtis Rourke, this is kind of his first chance to shine in a matchup like this his whole college football career. So I don't think it's like I don't think the gap is huge, and I don't think it's going to be like, oh my gosh, Will Howard is so much better than Curtis Rourke, because I think Curtis Rourke's great. I just think if we're talking, quarterback matchup, then you'll have to take the guy that's done it already a couple times this year.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. So where I'm at firmly. I've got Ohio State winning. I do think Indiana covers, though. Probably a backdoor cover. I think that's kind of where I'm at with it right now. Like, they're down 17 and they score a touchdown with 3 minutes left, and then they lose by 10. I think that's where I'm at on it. But
real quick,
yeah,
what's more likely, a thrashing like I referenced with that Michigan State game, or Indiana winning?
I think Indiana winning. Like, I don't think this is going to be a thrashing. I think that the bye week plays a role here for me. Like, Kurt Cignetti. By the way, I'm so glad that you mentioned that Ohio State has a coaching advantage, because I completely agree. Just because Cignetti's approval rating is higher than Ryan Day's doesn't mean that he's a better coach. And so, with that being said, though, like, having the bye week, having an extra week to go back and watch the second half of that Michigan game, figure out what went wrong, being able to self-scout and throw in some wrinkles for Ohio State. I think that's why I don't expect it to be a thrashing. In addition to it, like, I don't know, like, I've watched every snap Indiana's played this year, and outside of the Michigan game, they haven't given me any sort of reason to doubt them. Like, they've just crushed everybody. And obviously,
well, wouldn't that be a reason to doubt them? The one time they played a physically superior team. You know, I'm going to push back a little bit on self-scouting the Indiana game, because I don't think it was anything schematically. To me, it looked, and I watched it too, obviously go back and look, it looked like they just got pushed around. So they got physically dominated in the second half.
Let me ask you this. Does Ohio State have two interior defensive linemen who are likely going to be first or second round picks this year?
They have one, and then they have two defensive ends that are probably going to go in the first 2 rounds.
And that's the thing with the Michigan game. Like, they had those two, I'm blanking on their names. They had two defensive tackles. You said who?
Mason Graham.
Yes. And then anyway, so they've got these two guys who just kind of dominated the middle. Indiana had a backup guard playing in that game. I'm pretty sure they're back to their normal starting 5 offensive linemen.
No, he's starting again this weekend.
Oh, geez. I'm still not worried about it. I do think that the other thing is, like, it was, I don't know, man. I just, watching this team play, if you want to question the offense, I've got no issue with it, because you're right. Like, they struggled against Michigan in the second half, but they did go up 17-3 to open the game. So, like, that, I think, also has to matter. I think that I just have a lot of trust in the IU defense. That front 7, like, you're right, they're probably a little small, but I mean, they've got the best run defense in the Big Ten. When you look at the numbers, they're really tough on that side of the ball. Like, final score is probably going to be like 24-14 if I had to make a bet on it.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I don't. You're talking, like, you've said it yourself. Michigan's bad.
They are.
And, like, but Michigan is the best team they've played. And it looks like that. Like, I don't understand where this idea that and I'm not trying to be like Ryan Russillo and like say like India. I'm just saying like there's a lot of assumptions being made from Indiana fans and from people that, you know, don't like Ohio State, that Indiana is going to do all these things that they've done to Charlotte and that they've done to, you know, who like, are we not aware, like, this is another level than even, you know, winning 17-15 against Michigan? Like, do we really understand that, you know, they cover one receiver every game and they kind of do well against them. And then you add 4 more of those guys and double it in talent, and that's what you're facing? Or you're facing a 2-headed monster of 2 running backs that are going to be NFL starters when it's time for them to leave? Or are we going to talk about that the best defensive player in America is lined up against the offense? Like, they're like Jay Smith. Like, at some point we have to be realistic about this. And Indiana's a great story. They're great. They're just not there yet.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, Ohio State should win this game. But at the same time, I think to just completely write off Indiana after watching Ohio State a couple weeks ago struggle against Nebraska, who Indiana beat 56-7, I don't think it's fair to just completely write them off.
Well, if we're doing that, then didn't Indiana go into the fourth quarter against Northwestern down 3? Like, we can't do that.
I'm just saying, I mean, they pulled away and covered, but you're right. I'm just saying, like, Indiana is extremely well coached. I don't know if you heard the Urban Meyer interview when he came on last week. He agrees with you, by the way. Like, he thinks that the talent for Ohio State is going to overwhelm Indiana, which I agree with as well. But when you hear Urban Meyer say things like Indiana has the best tape of any team in the Big Ten, they do the little things better than anybody else. Like, when you do all those things, like, and look, like, if Will Howard, you know, throws a pick like he did against Penn State, like, don't get me wrong, like, Indiana's going to have to catch a break to win this game. They're going to have to win the turnover battle and things of that nature. But like, I think to just completely disregard them of like, oh, Ohio State's going to run them out of the building no matter what. I don't think that that's accurate either.
I think the only way that Indiana has a chance is if it's a track meet. If it's a similar game to the style we saw Oregon, Ohio State. I think if Indiana tries to grind it out, Ohio State's the best defense in the country in the red zone. If you think you're just going to methodically drive down the field and punch it in with touchdowns, I don't think that's going to work. I don't think a 24-14 game is in the cards for Indiana. I think it's got to be in the 30s or the 40s for them to win. If not, if they're not in the 30s or 40s, I think Ohio State runs away and doesn't look back. Like, those are the two things for me. Like, that the game script is either going to be a throttling, Indiana can't keep up, or it's just going to be a back and forth shootout where it's 38-35 or 42-35, something like that. It's got to be a high scoring game for Indiana to have a chance. I don't think they can go slugfest for slugfest with Ohio State.
But just thinking, okay, let me ask you, because I didn't watch the whole game. The closest games that Ohio State has played this year have been against Oregon and Nebraska, right? And obviously Oregon is more talented than IU, so I don't really want to talk about that one. But Nebraska played Ohio State close in a slugfest. Like, what is the difference between, I guess, Nebraska in that game versus Indiana in this one?
Well, again, I think if we point out any 1 point in a data set, we can look and make assumptions on it. But I'm at the totality of the season is that they went into Eugene and scored 35 and moved the ball well. They've have a plethora of talent at wide receiver. They're scoring points. They're in the top 5 offensive efficiency in the country. Like, we can look at that Nebraska game and think, what this and that. But if we're looking at the full season, like, it's pretty apparent that was a outlier.
Agreed. Well, I mean, if you look at the full season of Indiana, they're beating teams by an average of 30 points a game, which the schedule, I know, but like, that's what teams like Ohio State do to bad teams, right? So like, why are we only looking at one game against Michigan?
Because I think the idea there is that it was a physical issue. It was it was a physical athleticism issue. Like, they were getting dominated physically. And so playing bad or playing good is one thing schematically. But when you finally face a team that has a bunch of 4 and 5 star and NFL talent on it, and you get physically dominated, if this was any other team, Jonathan, you would say you would point that out as a big marker as to why this game could get ugly. The physicality portion, you can't coach. You just are either you're big and strong or you're not. And the first time they faced a team that was big and strong, they got pushed around in the second half. That's my point.
They did. And you're right on the point. I'm just pointing out that, like, I don't know. What do you think happens if IU loses? Are you in the boat of Indiana has – you said what?
They should be in. They should be in the playoff if they finish a Big Ten season 11-1. We talked about, everybody's like, one loss Big Ten team or whatever, they get in automatically. If this was Oregon or Ohio State that finished with this same 11-1 record, they'd be in. So we can't, that's where I'll draw the line on the Indiana thing about, hyping them up too much. They went through a Big Ten season. In this situation, they lose to Ohio State. They're 11-1. They're in the playoff. They have to be, unless we're admitting that we're showing bias based on the helmet. Like, that to me, that's simple.
To me, I think that we are. Like, I love how the committee is just like, what game doesn't matter for Penn State? The Ohio State game. We're still going to rank them 4th. Like, that's kind of my thing. And I'm with you. Like, I don't know. I say this now. My opinion will probably change after the game. But, like, no matter how bad Indiana loses, I think they should be in because I'm with you. Going 11-1 in really in the SEC or the Big Ten is really impressive. What do you think actually happens, though? Because I think that if Indiana loses, they'll find a way to put in Georgia or Alabama or Ole Miss or Tennessee or whoever over IU?
I honestly don't know. I think that the safer pick is to put IU, and it's kind of crazy that we even have to talk about like the safer pick instead of just like what's the right objective thing to do. I just think it sets a really bad precedent if they get left out when a team like Notre Dame goes undefeated or goes 11-1 too with a loss to a MAC school that's under 500 in MAC play. Like, I think that's where I think it just sets a bad precedent. It kind of lets the cat out of the bag, and you kind of see how the magic trick happens type of deal. And I don't think that's good going into the first year of the 12-team playoff, and then eventually expanding into the 14.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. Joined by Zack Gray, professional sports gambler. He gave out a couple bets earlier. He said take Virginia today plus 11 in college hoops and take James Madison tomorrow in the world of college football. So you may not even answer this question, but I have to ask. What if Ohio State loses?
It'll suck. That's for sure. If they lose, it's not good. Obviously, I think things will be kind of shaky for them. I think they still make the playoff just with that Penn State win alone.
And they'd have the two best losses in the country.
Yeah, and if they lose and then they go next week and beat Michigan, all is forgiven. They're in the playoff. It's kind of water under the bridge. So it's not code red. I would just really, really be disappointed in Ryan Day and that coaching staff if they were to lose this game. They should win. Like I said, I think they should win. Everybody thinks they should win.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the end of the world, but it would definitely be tough, especially with how spicy I was talking today.
Yeah, at ZG the Grapevine. If you guys missed that, if IU wins, you can let them have it on there. But
real quick, do you know where this vitriol comes from, Jay Smith?
Where this what?
You know what really sent me this vitriol? What sent me over the edge this week? I saw a guy on Twitter puffing his chest out. He was saying you can you can take it to the bank. Indiana wins 33-21, just like going crazy, like on every.
You there? Zach, you there?
Yeah, I'm there. Can you hear me?
You dropped there for a second.
Oh, my bad. Anyway, guy on Twitter just replying under every tweet. Indiana's going to win, book it, signed, sealed, delivered, whatever. So I called his bluff. I said, hey, straight up, $250. Let's put it on the line. If you're so confident, it's a free $250 for you. Let's do it. And wouldn't you know it, Jay Smith, he wouldn't. And that is how I feel like the Indiana fan base is right now. I think they're puffing their chest out. They're saying they're going to win. And I don't think 90% of them truly believe it. I think this is one of those manufactured college football matchups where, but what if they can't, or what if they do this, or what if, I think everyone really deep down knows what's going to happen. And we got to stop acting like there's a probable chance that Indiana wins this game, because there's just not. That's why the line is 10.5 now and got up to 14.5.
Yeah.
It's not a coin flip. Indiana could win. Sure. There's always that possibility, but it is not a probable conclusion to the game that Indiana wins. It would be completely shocking. And I think everyone knows that, but as Indiana fans have shown in the past, a la 2020, when they lost to Ohio State and still thought they should be the Big Ten champion, that was crazy. But they just get a dose of success, and you don't know how to act with it. So that's really what it comes down to. And I'll probably never be allowed on the show again. So I love you, Jay Smith. And no,
man, dude. Look, if y'all win next week, or if Ohio State wins, we're gonna bring you back, and you can run your mouth some more. That's fine with me.
It's all fun and games. It's all love.
It is. So I'm assuming you think that for Indiana to win, it's got to be like a Will Howard throws 2 picks and they get like a weird special teams play just to give them a couple extra possessions. Is that is that the path to victory for Indiana?
Yeah, it's something like that. Again, I just think it's got to be Indiana and Ohio State are both, slower tempo teams when it comes to plays per game. I think the idea here is that they have to get up and down the field in order to have a shot, because like I said, Ohio State is too good in the red zone on defense and offense to kind of think that you're just going to go drive for drive with them, 12, 11, 8 play drives consistently and win the game. So I think there's got to be big plays. They got to get up and down the field. They got to match. And then obviously I think, the team in that scenario, the team that makes the mistake is probably the one that's going to lose. That's the path to me. That's how I could see it when I'm picturing a loss for Ohio State.
Yeah, that's kind of how I'm seeing it. Oh man, I was gonna ask you one more question and I forgot what it was. I'm gonna switch gears entirely here and then I will let you go. What are your thoughts on what's happening with the 76ers? Because I know you're a hoops guy.
I think it's just like I think it was building for a while, and I think people kind of ignored it. We kind of knew years ago that it wasn't going to really work, and they're trying to microwave a championship roster, and we've seen that doesn't always work. And I think that the chickens are coming home to roost, as they say. And I think this is just the logical conclusion to the Sixers era. And it's time to take it all down and rebuild it. And I think we don't see Embiid in a Sixers uniform for too much longer, honestly.
Yeah, I'm with you. Man, I can't believe playoff P didn't solve all their issues. Can't believe it.
Right. Like, what are we doing?
Zach, thanks for your time, man. As always, if you want to give out those bets one more time, I've had you on for a while now. If you just want to, if you want to give them out again, so that the people remember, Virginia plus 11.
We got Virginia plus 11 today in college basketball against St. John's, and then James Madison -7 tomorrow against Appalachian.
Okay, let's go. I'm sure we'll be texting during the game tomorrow. Can't wait. I just hope it's close. That's really all I want, because there's, aside from this game, like, I guess Ole Miss Florida will be fun. I don't know.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, I'm excited, and I can't wait to come on the show next week, win or loss, to kind of to see where we're at, gauge where my head is, gauge where your guys' head is.
Yep, it'll be good. Zach, thanks for your time, man.
Yep, see you, man.
That is Zack Gray. Follow him on Twitter at ZG the Grapevine. Check out the Patreon linked in his bio. He does a great job giving out picks. Really smart guy. Can't wait to have him on again next week, as he comes on every Friday. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, Colts, Lions, that happens on Sunday. I'm going to give you my thoughts here in 4 minutes.
Often imitated, never duplicated. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you guys are having a nice week. Colts take on the Lions this week, right? Indiana going on the road tomorrow to Columbus. Big game there, playing against arguably the best team in the NFL, while the Indianapolis Colts are hosting the best team in the NFL. So, look, this Lions team's loaded. No other way around it. Just a lot of talent. They're really good. Best offense in the NFL, best third down defense in the NFL. I mean, they're going to get after the Colts. And, you know, the Colts are 7.5 point underdogs for a reason. Okay? Like, you can find it at 7 points other places, but 7.5 seems to be the line that I keep finding. And the way for the Colts to win this is really simple. Force turnovers, don't make mistakes. Okay? As much as Anthony Richardson has improved, like, he's not going score for score with Detroit. He's just not. It's not going to happen. I'd be really shocked if he did. And if he does do that, then we can all be really excited, because you go score for score with Detroit this year, then you got a really good quarterback. And so we'll see what happens there, but they have to avoid turning the ball over. No interceptions, no bad fumbles, nothing like that. And the defense, DeForest Buckner, Leatu Latu, Kwity Paye, Kenny Moore, Jalen Jones, like, these guys have got to make plays to get the football back, to steal possessions, right? And they're going to have opportunities to do it, potentially, because Dan Campbell wants to go for it on fourth down whenever he can. Okay, whenever he can go for it on fourth down, like, he's going to do it. And so the Colts are going to have opportunities to make big plays, to swing the momentum, and to steal some possessions from the Lions. That has to happen. It has to happen. Okay, so defensively, they've got to force turnovers. Offensively, you have to avoid turning the ball over, and you have to run it well. Okay, like, it can't be another week of Jonathan Taylor running for 2.5 yards a carry. That cannot happen. Okay, like, simple as that. If that is what the Colts run game looks like again, Jonathan Taylor 2.5 yards a carry, and Anthony Richardson 3.2 yards a carry, then they are going to lose. They've got to run the football. They have to avoid turning it over, and their defense has to force turnovers. All right, they need to win this game, because 6-6 is just way better than 5-7. Okay, if you get to 6-6, the schedule down the stretch, 5 games left, not super tough, right? That toughest game is probably going to be at the Broncos. Aside from that, like, it's a lot of very winnable games. The Patriots, the Jags, the Titans, teams like that. So they need to win this week. Will they? Probably not. I like the Lions to win. They're just better. There's no other way to put it. That offense is electric, the best one in the NFL. The defense is criminally underrated. And I don't even know if it's underrated. I think it's just not talked about enough because of how dynamic that Lions offense is. So we'll see how it goes. Can't wait. That game's at Sunday, 1 o'clock, in a terrible 1 o'clock window. And then, of course, Indiana, Ohio State tomorrow at noon. Cannot wait. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, I'm going to give you my thoughts on that. If I have time, I've got thoughts on Indiana beating UNC Greensboro in basketball last night, and just the incredible amount of frustrations I have watching that team play. But IU, Ohio State, my thoughts on that here in 4 minutes.
Welcome back to The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Indiana on the road tomorrow at noon to take on Ohio State, where they are underdogs. 11.5-point underdogs the last time I checked. And they're going to have to play their best game of the season. I had Zack Gray on at 11 o'clock and I felt like just in circles about the game. And look, this game's not very complicated. It's really not. Also, if you didn't hear, Daniel Jones got released. Sucks for him. Cowboys, please pick him up so we can watch the Daniel Jones-led Cowboys play against the New York Giants on Thanksgiving. That would be amazing. Thank you. Indiana, Ohio State. Indiana, an 11.5-point underdog. Going on the road into Columbus, and Ohio State is a heavy favorite, and rightfully so. They are more talented than Indiana is everywhere. No way around it, okay? Like, Ohio State's offensive line, better. Ohio State's defensive line, better. The receivers, definitely better. Their running backs, better. They've got the best safety in college football. Like, they are loaded. Okay? $20 million buys you a lot of really good college football players. Okay? That's how much this roster allegedly costs for Ohio State. They have forked out the money. They have brought in a boatload of talent. And, geez, here comes Indiana. The best story in college football this year. Okay, a bad team last year. They hire Kurt Cignetti, an older head coach who had a lot of success at James Madison and at some Division II schools, and a guy who coached with Nick Saban when he was getting Alabama up and running and all of those things. And Indiana's just been pat on the head. You're a nice story, but you don't have a chance on Saturday. No way. And they have an opportunity on Saturday to prove that they do indeed have a chance and that they are, one of the best teams in the country. Like, I think that they are. Like, sure, I had Zach on, an Ohio State fan and a really smart football guy. He brought up the Michigan game a lot, and rightfully so, because Michigan's the most talented team that Indiana's played all year. There's not a doubt about it. And in the second half, Indiana really struggled. Like, if Michigan had halfway decent quarterback play, then Michigan probably would have beaten Indiana in Bloomington on that night against Michigan. That's probably what would have happened, but Michigan's quarterback wasn't very good, and Indiana was able to get out of there. But, that doesn't erase the other 9 games that we've seen the Hoosiers play. It doesn't. And sure, Ohio State's the most talented team that Indiana's going to play all year. Okay? But here's the thing with Indiana. This is the most well-coached team Ohio State's going to play all year. Indiana is going to be incredibly well prepared for this game. There's not a doubt in my mind. They are going to be so incredibly well prepared coming off of that bye week. Okay? And that is a big advantage. They're having the week to self-scout, figure out what went wrong, why they couldn't run the football. Maybe it was just a physical thing against Michigan where Michigan just had better players, and because of that, Indiana doesn't stand much of a chance. But having that extra week to prepare gives me a lot of faith in Indiana. And the other reason why I have a lot of faith in Indiana is because Coach Cignetti is their head coach. Here he is last week. Obviously they were off, so he went on Big Noon Kickoff, and he was answering questions about this game against Ohio State, and here's what he had to say.
Just talking about this matchup, I mean, it arguably could be the biggest game in Indiana football history.
Yeah, I love when you guys say stuff like that. It makes me laugh.
Name a bigger one.
I mean, look,
name a bigger one.
We're open this week, and we treated it like every other open week. We got recharged, re-energized, and we slow cooked on the next opponent a little bit. The coaches didn't slow cook, but in terms of installation, we'll approach this like any other game because that's how it's a big game because it's the next game. And if there was a better way to prepare for a quote big game, we would prepare that way every week. So, I mean, we're process driven, process oriented. We got to stack moments and days, put ourselves in the best position to have success Saturday, play our game and play it well.
Indiana head coach Curt Cignetti right there. His confidence just makes me feel better. It does. And that is something that runs over into everybody else. Okay, like Indiana has guys that have won games. Like they do. Like all those guys that came from James Madison are accustomed to winning. Bringing in Curtis Rourke from Ohio, MAC Player of the Year last year, right? That guy. Yeah, like I know that Indiana is greatly outmatched by Ohio State. I just like they are, right? Top to bottom of the roster, Ohio State's better. I think the one area where they're similar is quarterback, which is important because if you're better everywhere on your roster and you're better at quarterback, then that is the means to blow somebody out. I don't think that that's the case. And, look, they're banged up. Starting center out for the rest of the year. Starting left tackle out for the rest of the year. Okay. So I feel bad for those guys, but that's a good thing for Indiana in terms of their potential to go on the road and to win this game. The game's at noon. That is in favor of Indiana. If this game was at night, I don't think Indiana would have a chance. Okay. But they've got this guy in Coach Cignetti who, as we all know, is an incredibly good coach, right? He's shown up. He's turned everything around so incredibly fast. And there's momentum and there's excitement. And there's a part of me that realizes that they could run into this buzzsaw that is Ohio State and get their doors blown off and lose by 3 touchdowns. And then I got to get on Twitter and I got to deal with obnoxious SEC fans being like, oh, I thought Indiana was great. They just got blown out by Ohio State and all these things. And then there's more conversation about whether or not they should be in the playoff, which they should be, whether they win or lose. Will they be? Probably not. But I also firmly believe that there's a good chance that Indiana walks into Columbus tomorrow and maybe they don't win. Okay? Like something crazy is going to happen and it's going to have to happen in order for them to win. Like Ohio State is going to have to do something uncharacteristic for Indiana to win this game, right? Ohio State's going to have to throw 2 picks, or a defensive back's going to have to trip and fall and Indiana gets a cheap touchdown, or Ohio State's going to have to muff a punt that Indiana jumps on. Something like that is going to have to happen in order for Indiana to win this game. But here's the thing. Teams that are well prepared, teams that do all the little things, like Urban Meyer talked about on Dan's show last week, fortune favors those teams that are extremely well prepared and constantly do things right and work hard and do the little things. Those teams tend to catch breaks. They just do because they constantly do things right. It's amazing. You ever realize that bad teams never seem to have the ball bounce their way, but the good teams do? It's almost like because doing the right thing, preparing properly, and doing all the little things correctly during a game just favors you. It's pretty incredible how that happens. So I'm excited for tomorrow. I think Indiana's got a chance to go in there and win. Will they? Probably not. My official prediction is Indiana loses, but they cover that 11.5 point spread. It's going to be nice, hopefully a nice cleansing of the palate after watching Indiana beat UNC Greensboro 69-58 last night. They gave up 17 offensive rebounds again. That's just disgusting. They're too big, too athletic, and they're too big and too athletic to give up that many offensive rebounds. Okay, they won by 11. That's not what the best teams in the country do. It's just not. Like what UConn's doing is doing to bad teams. That's what the best teams in the country do. Okay, like when you look at UConn's wins, they beat Sacred Heart by 36, New Hampshire by 39, Lemoyne by 41, and East Texas A&M by 35. That's what the best teams in the country do to bad opponents. And look, is UNC Greensboro bad? No, like I'm sure they'll be fine in their conference, but they aren't 11 points worse than Indiana. They're not. That's why the line was set at 18. Okay, Indiana basketball has got to play with more effort. Just no way around it. 17 offensive rebounds is just pitiful. And if they'd played a halfway decent team, they would have lost because they didn't shoot the ball very well. at all. That's going to do it here for the Real Jonathan Smith Show. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way here at noon. Make sure you download that Indy Sports Ticket app so you can listen to his show every day from noon to 3. Reese Davis is set to join at 2, and then we've got an Ohio State guest at 12:30. Should be just an absolute blast, being on the Dan Dockett Show, because the Dan Dockett Show is always an absolute blast. Last thing before I take off, we need less domes in the NFL. I need more football games outside. I need more snow games. Okay, like that's what I need. That game last night, did I bet the Pittsburgh Steelers? I did. Did I lose my bet? I did, but I had fun watching the game because it was in the snow. Just an incredible spectacle, that Browns and Steelers game last night. Thanks again for tuning into the Real Jonathan Smith Show. I'll be back again Monday from 10 to noon with my thoughts on Indiana, Ohio State, and of course, Colts versus Lions. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way here in 5 minutes.